What up, Kirkomaniacs? Today I am going to be reviewing Spider-Man No Way Home, which just came out the other day. There will be plenty of spoilers in this review, so if you have not seen the movie yet and do not want anything spoiled for you, now is your warning. Now is your chance to get the fuck out. Let's talk about the recent movie Spider-Man No Way Home. And you know, a common criticism of superhero movies, particularly the MCU, is that they're all the same. Superhero movies, they're all the same. It's the same story. The superhero, the good guys, they always win in the end. And one thing about this movie, you know, after watching it, and it is a lot of fun. This is a very fun movie. It's full of nostalgia porn and member berries. All three Spider-Mans, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, the Tom Holland, the current Spider-Man, they all team up to save the day. It's really fun watching them banter and bond and joke with each other and team up. There's a lot of fun in this movie. I don't entirely hate it. In fact, I will probably see it again. I will probably enjoy clips from this movie, rewatching scenes and clips on YouTube for years to come. But after all the fun was over, after the movie ended, I could not help but think about who really wins in this movie. Because it's not the good guys. It's certainly not Spider-Man. In fact, I think this is how the movie should have ended. This is how I would have ended Spider-Man No Way Home. I would have ended it around that scene where Spider-Man, he brings Norman Osborn, the Goblin, to Doctor Strange's creepy dungeon basement. And it's the last bad guy he's bringing back from another universe to Doctor Strange to send them all back to their respective universe. And I probably would have had Spider-Man say something like, hey, Doctor Strange, I kind of got that Scooby-Doo joke you said earlier when you said, Scooby-Doo that shit. You know, at first I thought it was just a joke about solving mysteries, but then I thought about it, and, you know, a lot of times in Scooby-Doo, they unmask the bad guy. That's kind of like what I'm going through right now, you know, Doctor Strange, because Mysterio, he like unmasked me for the entire world. But also, when you really think about it, Mysterio is kind of like a Scooby-Doo villain. And then Doctor Strange would respond with something like, look, kid, I think you're overthinking my joke a little too much. I think what happened was the writers who wrote this movie, they probably grew up watching a little too much Family Guy. And have come to conflate pop culture references with jokes. But also, I think it's a way for the writers to tie the real world into this work of fiction, referencing pop culture. It's a way of tying this fictional movie in with the real world so that the audience can better connect with it. And then Spider-Man would say something like, oh, I get what you're doing now, Doctor Strange. You're breaking the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall? Yeah, you know, breaking the fourth wall. It's when, like, one of the performers turns to the audience. Bitch! Do you know who the fuck I am? I am Dr. Motherfucking Strange. That's right. Let me ask you something, Peter. Do you think walls exist in my world? Walls mean jack shit to me, Peter. Tell you what, you know what's going to happen one day, Peter? You know what's going to happen is one day you're going to be in a nice bathroom taking a wonderful shit. That's right, Peter. It's going to be one of those shits that you feel like you lose 20 pounds after you're done flushing the toilets. It's one of those shits that gives you a positive outlook on life for the rest of the day because you just feel so great about it. And you're going to be sitting there, Peter, on the toilets, thinking that everything is fine, everything is safe. You have your privacy with these big, strong four walls. But then you're going to see some sparkles in front of you. You're going to see my that trademark sparkly ass circle that you often see from me. It's going to start to form, and it's going to be me. That's right, Doctor Strange, coming to watch you poop, Peter. And I'm probably going to say something like, "Don't forget to wipe," before shooting you a wink and then closing the circle. I'm going to do all this just to remind you, Peter, that walls don't exist to me. And then after that exchange is done, Otto Octavius, and this actually happens in the movie, Otto Octavius, he sees Norman Osborn, the Goblin, and he's all like, "Whoa, Norman, is that you? This is impossible. You were killed by Spider-Man." And then Sandman chimes in. Sandman's all like, "Hey, yo, Otto Octavius, I think Spider-Man kills you too, bro." And then all of the bad guys immediately become suspicious of Spider-Man. I think Lizard and Electro come to the same conclusion. They all become immediately suspicious of Spider-Man. But then Doctor Strange is like, "Hey, look, that sounds pretty shitty, guys, but I have worse news. You guys can't stay here. I'm sending you back." And then Peter Parker, he starts to have this moral dilemma. He's like, "Oh, but Doctor Strange, is it really right for us to send all these guys back to their universe where they're going to meet their certain death? Maybe we should try to help them and fix them before we send them back." And I think at this point, Doctor Strange should have done that thing he did to Loki in Thor Ragnarok. For those who don't remember, this is what happened. Loki shows up on Earth, and then Strange puts one of those sparkly portals under him and then drags him into the gravity dimension or whatever, where Loki's falling for 30 minutes. And I would have had Strange do that to Peter Parker just to get him out of the way for a minute. And then Doctor Strange, he would have turned to the bad guys. He would have turned to the bad guys like Sandman and Otto and all of them. And he would have said something like, "Look, guys, I don't know much about you. Quite frankly, I don't give a rat's ass. But according to you guys, it sounds like you guys all get your asses whooped by Spider-Man in your own universe, some to the point of death. So, you know what? Here's a thought. You guys, if you guys want to live, if you guys don't want to die after you arrive back in your universe, here's a thought. Don't fuck with Spider-Man. All right? Capiche? Goodbye." And then he would send them all back. And then Strange would bring Peter Parker back from that falling dimension. And he would sit Peter Parker's ass down and say, "Look, Peter, I got to tell you something. I know your Aunt May. I know she means well. She's a good person, sounds like a good person, probably has a heart of gold. But Aunt May's goofy-ass morality, it's gonna get her killed. In fact, it might get you killed, Peter. This nonsense about how if you help someone, you help everyone. This altruism bullshit where you prioritize the interests of others above your own interest. It's probably gonna ruin your life, Peter. Just a word of advice. Anyway, good luck at MIT." And then I would roll credits, and then the post-credit scene, I would probably have Peter Parker in the bathroom, nervously taking a shit, waiting for that sparkle to appear. But instead of the sparkly circle showing up, he gets a text message from Aunt May, who says something like, "Hey, Peter, guess what? Doctor Strange just showed up, and he told me to tell you to not forget to wipe. Remember, Peter, with great poop comes great responsibility." But this is not how the movie ends, and it doesn't end with the good guys winning in the end. Who ultimately wins in Spider-Man No Way Home? Because it certainly is not Spider-Man. Spider-Man loses everything he loves and cares about by the end of the movie. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, and people keep telling me that, "Oh, well, this is the ethos of Spider-Man." As if to say, what else do I expect? You know, Spider-Man, he always loses something. He always loses a lot. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, especially in this particular Spider-Man trilogy. When you consider the other two movies, Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man actually achieves the goals in both of those movies. In Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man is seeking to become a superhero. He wants to become one of the Avengers. He's really excited. He's glad he got to hang out and fight with the Avengers in Germany. And that's all he wants. And he's constantly disobeying and disregarding Tony Stark. He gets his suit taken away, and then he has to fight Vulture under-equipped and underhanded. He succeeds, and then he eventually gains the respect of Tony Stark to the point where Tony is about to introduce him as one of the Avengers. And then Peter decides, you know what? He makes the mature decision. And I really like this about Spider-Man Homecoming. And I really like that movie. Spider-Man turns it down, says, you know what? I should probably just be friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for a while. Goes on his way. Tony Stark and Happy Hogan are very proud of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker. Then in the second movie, in this movie, Peter Parker is seeking the love and heart of his crush, MJ, to the point where he is disregarding his responsibilities as being an Avenger, as being a superhero. He's starting to ignore Nick Fury's calls. If you remember, he chooses to not pack his Spider-Man suit for his class trip in Europe. Aunt May ends up packing it for him. Once he's there, he keeps trying to get out of the obligations of helping out Mysterio and getting into these fights. All Peter Parker wants to do is just be a kid, hang out with his friends, make a move on MJ, and he eventually does that. Adding to the point where he skirts his responsibilities, he actually gives Edith this army, this fleet of high-tech weaponized drones that Tony Stark left for him. He hands that over to Mysterio, assuming Mysterio is a good guy. And he eventually ends up winning the love and heart of MJ by the end of the movie. Of course, then Mysterio then reveals that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, kind of ruining the moment. Nonetheless, Peter Parker still achieves his goal in this movie. And now you come over to Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man loses everything he loves and cares about, which I gotta ask again, who really wins in this movie? It's not Spider-Man. It's certainly not Aunt May. It's not Happy Hogan. It's not Ned. It's not MJ. Doctor Strange maybe breaks even in the end. And who really wins? Spider-Man ends up losing everything he loves and cares about at what cost? So that a handful of bad guys and villains can get their second chance. And now some people might be thinking, but this is a positive thing of Spider-Man because he saw the good in a lot of these bad guys. He saw the good. He saw that they can all be fixed and cured, and he was right. This was another thing I didn't like about this movie, was going back to that scene with Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange wants to send all of them back, and Peter Parker does initially. And this is the turning point. This is the whole thing. This is my whole problem with the theme of this movie, is that this movie is all about morality. It is all about altruism. It's not subtle. They really beat you over the head with the altruistic morality in this movie. Peter Parker wants to send all of these guys back. First, you have to consider that Peter Parker, he does have a goal in this movie. He wants everyone in the world, with the exception of the people close to him, like MJ and Aunt May and Ned, he wants everyone to forget that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And when he pursues that goal, he gets punished for it. He gets consequences. And then when Peter is tasked with finding all 5 of the villains that came to this universe from other Spider-Verses or whatever, he finds Norman Osborn, who sought out Aunt May, brings him, and it's at this point where Spider's like, I got to get this guy back to his universe. And Aunt May, the bleeding heart altruist that she is, she starts talking about how, well, Peter, is this what's good for you? Are you just thinking about yourself in this situation? You know, maybe you should help these guys before sending them back. I mean, you know, Norman Osborn, he seems like he's good, but he has problems. You know, you shouldn't just think about yourself in this situation, Peter. And it is not until Peter realizes that some or all of these guys are going to die that he changes his mind and says, hey, Doctor Strange, why don't we try helping these guys before sending them back? Do we really want to send them back to their death? And I don't think Doctor Strange gives a good reason for sending them back. It's very deterministic, very duty-bound. He talks about how they have to be sent back to maintain the integrity of the multiverse or whatever. And also mentions about how even if you wanted to help them, there's nothing you can do to help them. It's part of their fate. It's their destiny or whatever. I really did not like that aspect of Doctor Strange. I came away liking Doctor Strange less after this movie, especially after Spider-Man got the upper hand on him and trapped him in the mirror dimension. But this is the big turning point. Spider-Man is being punished for pursuing his values, and now he is turning toward altruism. He is elevating the interests of these bad guys, these villains, and thinking about what's good for them above his own self-interest in this situation. But this scene is one of the turning points for Spider-Man, a turning point toward the morality of altruism. So then Peter Parker, he frees the 5 guys. He takes them back to Happy Hogan's apartment with Aunt May. They end up curing Otto Octavius. And then they're almost done curing Electro, Max Dillon. And it's at this point where Norman Osborn turns into the Goblin. For those who don't know, Goblin has this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing going on, split personalities. When he's Norman Osborn, he's a good guy. When he's Goblin, he's a power luster. He also has superhuman strength and all that good stuff. He's a weapons developer, so he has a lot of high-tech weapons. And Goblin turns on Spider-Man and Aunt May. He ruins their plan to fix all the bad guys. And Goblin tells the other bad guys, oh, forget about Spider-Man. He thinks these are things that need to be cured. I see them as gifts that you guys should embrace. And he specifically reveals that he is using their morality. He's using Aunt May's and Spider-Man's morality against them and tells Spider-Man that his morality is his weakness. Again, they're very explicit about morality in this movie. And then Goblin ends up throwing some bombs, fatally wounding Aunt May. And even at this point, Peter Parker, he starts to have regrets, saying, I'm sorry, Aunt May, I should have listened to Doctor Strange. We should have sent them back. And Aunt May insists that, no, Peter, you were right. You made the right decisions. When the reality is that Aunt May's morality ultimately got her killed. So then Spider-Man, he ends up meeting other versions of Spider-Man. They team up. They end up curing all 5 of the bad guys. Peter Parker says, I want to meet these guys at the Statue of Liberty because that's the Statue of Liberty. That's the ultimate symbol of the second chance. And again, this is what this movie is all about. After Peter Parker is told that he should not think about himself, that he should focus on helping someone, because if you help someone, you help everyone, he decides to try to give a bunch of villains, some of whom are guilty of murder, and who have tried to kill Spider-Man at points in this movie. He decides to go on a mission to give all of these villains a second chance. And he ends up succeeding in this mission. Him and the other Spider-Mans, they end up curing all 5 of the villains, despite the fact that Goblin almost killed MJ and ended up blowing up the spell box that the failed spell was contained in, causing it to go haywire, forcing Peter Parker into this lose-lose dilemma of either having to fight all of these new villains who are coming from different Spider-Verses, or he has to ask Doctor Strange to cast the original spell that makes everyone in the world forget about Peter Parker, this time with no strings attached, no concessions, and that would have a consequence of losing everyone he loves. MJ would forget about him. His mentor, Happy Hogan, would forget about him. His best friend, Ned, would forget about him. The Avengers would forget about him. And that's ultimately what happens in the end. Peter Parker is alone. MJ, his love interest, completely forgets about him. Everyone forgets about him. He visits MJ at the coffee shop she works at, and she has no clue who he is, serves him a cup of coffee that says, "We are happy to serve you." Again, I think the altruism, they really beat you over the head with the altruism in this movie. He has a change of heart of trying to talk to MJ about remembering him after seeing that MJ and Ned have been accepted into MIT. Then he visits Aunt May's grave, which again reads, when you help someone, you help everyone. Really beating you over the head with the altruism. He's met by a Happy Hogan who also does not remember who Peter Parker is. And the movie ends with Peter Parker finding a rundown apartment similar to the one that Tobey Maguire had in his Spider-Man movies. And he's all alone for the holidays, and this is Peter Parker's life now. He no longer has Aunt May, he no longer has Happy Hogan, he no longer has MJ or Ned or the Avengers. He's all alone, and he's broke now. He's lost everything he loves and cares about. And for what purpose? For what purpose? To give a handful of bad guys their second chance. And again, you might say, well, this shows an admirable trait about Peter Parker. He sees the good in people and wants to bring it out and give them a second chance. I can see that, and yeah, that's what happens. Norman Osborn, he gets to go back to his universe with his sanity now intact, and he's probably going to develop a healthy relationship with his son, Harry Osborn. Otto Octavius gets to go back to his universe without the chip, without the metal arms controlling him. And now Otto Octavius gets to turn his life around. Sandman Flint Marko also gets to go back to his universe to spend time with his family. If you remember, he kills Uncle Ben in his universe. That's also something I didn't like about the Raimi Spider-Man movies, which I just watched for the first time a few weeks ago. I really don't like that Peter Parker forgives Flint Marko at the end, but nonetheless, in this movie, Flint Marko gets to go back to his universe, see his family, have his second chance. Same with Max Dillon, who, before he turns into Electro, he's very geeky, awkward, he lacks self-esteem. And in this movie, he really shows self-esteem. He has a lot of confidence. So he gets to go back and have his second chance. Same with Dr. Connors. So yeah, sure, all of these villains, they get to go back. They get to have their second chance and try to live happier lives. But then you got to wonder at what cost. I start to wonder, where's Aunt May's second chance? Wasn't she a good person for most of her life, and now she has to pay? She has to be sacrificed for these 5 guys to have their second chance? Where's Spider-Man's second chance? Spider-Man's supposed to be a hero, and yet he loses everything he loves and cares about at the end of the movie. And this is my problem with Spider-Man No Way Home. And while it is a fun movie, there's a lot of fun moments. There's a part of me that's really glad this movie was made. I'm probably going to see it again. And I'm probably going to rewatch a lot of the scenes on YouTube clips for years to come. And I know that altruism is often invoked in superhero movies, especially the MCU. This is not the first time that altruism was invoked. But again, morality and altruism are the overarching themes of this movie. What Spider-Man No Way Home ultimately demonstrates is that it's bad, that it's frowned upon to think of yourself. It's frowned upon to be selfish. That what it means to be good, what it means to be heroic, is focusing on helping others. And that losing everything that you love and care about is worth the price of giving a handful of bad guys their second chance. Doesn't that sound wonderful, folks?
No, of course not.